I am so glad that we can just get together today. I love New Year's Day, and this is one of those things that I amuse myself with, which is just how long it takes to turn a corner. And I know I mentioned that in my message I sent out, my little newsletter this morning, but the transitions are great. And so why I love New Year's Day is because I expect so little by the time I get to this stage in like our whole run of holidays. And I'm usually by now very tired, very just kind of worn out on deep reflection and contemplation because I've been doing it since Hallowmas, which is for many witches consider Hallows Eve to be the new year. And so from that point through Thanksgiving, through solstice, through Christmas, through all of the other little bits that we come upon along the path, by the time we get to New Year's Day, I'm in sweatpants and eating leftovers. And so that's kind of what we're up to here with this live is we're just we're wearing sweatpants and eating leftovers. So this is very scrappy, very casual little gathering here. And just to begin by acknowledging that we are kind of in this sort of crossroads moment, and then kind of see like, oh, we're passing away from 2022 into 2023. And for me, doing that with these very physical tools, these very wonderful documents that we create in our Dreamfruits, it's really grounding. And not everybody is like that. And even a lot of Dreamfruit travelers are not like that. So some of the things that I'm going to be kind of pointing at might not be your jam, which is totally, totally great and fine. But mostly I just wanted you to have a little frame so that you can choose how you want to work with your magic dream fruit for the new year. When we, when I had B-Space in Portland, maybe some of you will remember fondly my little expressive arts movement space. Every New Year's Day, we would just get together for a New Year's open studio, and I would just kind of open the doors and lay out a few things for people to play with, and then maybe put on some music and invite folks to come hang out. And so, thanks for hanging out. So, yes, we are at this crossroads where we're looking at the past, we're looking at the future, and we are standing in the present. And so I want to just honor and invite the blessed Queen of the Crossroads, Hecate, to be with us. I've lit a candle and I'm just acknowledging that we are met at moments of transition by greater than our own small minds can conjure, archetypes and energies, spirits, helpful allies. And for me, that one of the main allies that I am so grateful for is Hecate. So here she is, our Queen of the Crossroads, helping us look kind of three directions at once. So the first thing then that I would like to do is kind of acknowledge where we've been, certainly where I've been. Here is my 2022 journal with the awesome book band made by the one and only Elise Crone. And there are a few things inside Dreamfruit that are really intended to support the beginning and ending of the year. And I want to show you, I'll show you how the year began in 2022. Looking back, we remember that we stepped through the gate into this story of the year, which we looked at through the lens of kind of seasonal, a seasonal overview here. And if you will recall, let's see if I can tell you what page this is on. This is on page 12 of your 2022 book. We really did take a journey. We kind of started in these hallowed halls of magical learning, and we stepped out off into the wild beyond, into the enchanted forest, and then we kind of spiraled back to the kind of academy where we began, and this is where we find ourselves, is in this 13th moon. And when we returned, we found that not only had we been changed by this journey, moon by moon, but that the place that we began was not the same anymore. And if you have read the dream from the commemoration moon, which is the lunar cycle that we are in right now, you will see that we returned to what we remembered to be our safe place, only to find that it had been damaged by war. And so we want to just acknowledge that even though time does move in a cyclical way, it doesn't ever return to the exact same place. And I'm sure you have thought about or considered with others the spiral path, so instead of just ongoing circle, 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 we circle around and then we spiral to the next. So we might come back to a similar place, and it might look similar, but it's not going to be the same. And that's what we see here in the 13th moon. The place we return to is different, and we ourselves are changed. So I was looking at this morning, at my notes that I put into these 4 little boxes from the overview, the seasonal overview for this past year. And I'm so glad I had these notes throughout the year. They were really helpful to me. And even looking at them now, after all this time has passed and actually having covered the terrain, I can see that it was really helpful to me, that I was, like this past season that we just closed out at solstice, for me, for example, was about, building systems and structures of care and forging neighbor networks and being more intentional about my connections with others. And of course, when I reflect now, I see like the last several months have been very much about reaching out and seeing what can be created together. So I'm just gonna, I'm pointing this out from last year because it just helps to reflect, and so much of the commemoration lunar cycle is about acknowledging and marking what has gone before. And this is such a good time to look back. And I also was noticing some of the words that I circled on page 15 really became they came into the foreground in my lived experience through the year, and I'm also really grateful for that. So it's kind of fun to reflect. So I'm saying this just to invite you to take a moment to reflect back before jumping ahead. We get so hurried, don't we? We get so eager to move on. And I've got a Taurus rising, and so I know that not everybody is going to move like I do. I move very slowly. And so slowly, in fact, that here, this is my 2022 Mandala of Belonging, and I've only had, like 25% or 30% of my mandala filled in. I have written in the allies that have that appeared for me moon by moon, but this is the last I actually filled it in. And so just to really get it's not about, how it looks, it's about how it helps you. And I am actually really helped seeing what I kind of placed in the center of my mandala for the year. We did sigil work this year, so this is a sigil for wholehearted and fruitful. And then for those of you who are new to Dreamfruit, just to kind of see like this, you can place something after having done some of this advanced work, and I'm going to show you this in the new book in a second. After doing some of this kind of thinking and looking at the themes ahead, you might identify ways that you want to feel, a word or an energy that you want to conjure, and that's what goes in the center of this mandala. And then each of these little sections of fruit is a moon, a lunar cycle. And each moon brings an opportunity to connect with a magical ally. And when that ally arises, you might record it in the actual pages of the moon section, and then you also might record it here. And what can happen that's really quite magical is that then you see, and I know that there are several people who are here in this group who have completed theirs in a just stunning way. You can see the circle of support that really kind of bloomed around you throughout the year as you took your journey, inspired by what you placed in the center. And I'm mentioning all of that, we're not going to get into the lunar sections yet, to bring us now to what happens when we close the gate. And we're closing the circle now. This is where we are in the 2022 book. This is on page 122. Closing the circle. And there is an opportunity here. There's a little benediction. I'd like to read this actually. If you recall, when we began the journey and we stepped onto the path, we got a little bit of a discussion of what the world of Dreamfruit is like. And this is just the enchantment of what happens once you step through the gate and walk through each of these moons, the terrain ahead. And this is an orientation, but one of the things that you learn in the invocation is that there is a small trust of women in scarlet robes walking the early morning waterline along the coast, this kind of oceany coastline with morning mists and a sea gray sunrise, and they sing, and you can hear them sing as they step barefoot through the cold wet foam. They sing to the pebbles and to the bits of bone that are cast like runes across the sand. And these scarlet robed women, they toss this song to and fro, each adding the next verse to create a living record of the dawn and the changes that the night has brought to shore. So Dreamfruit is a call and response, a form of echolocation. It's how we know who and where we are in relation to the times at hand. It's how we measure the changes. It's how we read the runes. Dreamfruit is an augury, moon by moon. And I'm sharing that because as we close the circle, we return to this misty shoreline where the scarlet-robed women have been listening all year. They've been here with their bare feet, tracing patterns in the sand, translating your steps, step by step by step, translating your steps into shape, into song. And the invitation is to, as you're ready today or at your leisure when the energy is right, light a candle, step closer to where these women have been listening and tracing patterns, and see the design that their path makes in this cool, damp sand. One by one, these women will gather in circle around you, and there are 13 of them side by side. They see you. They have heard you throughout the year, crying, laughing as the moons grew and waned, moon by moon they listened. And they have divined wisps of your dreams as if through a sea glass window. And they each hold a verse to share about your journey that only you can hear. And if you're willing, ask them a question, let their answer bloom. And here you might collect, many little verses, moon by moon by moon, like tiny little bits. You might see a single image that will appear here, but it's just a good way to kind of collect a little bit from your journey and find a way to kind of bundle it up and seal your journey on this page. I've just made some notes here for myself. Some of my gleanings, these are my gleanings from the year. The biggest one, of course, is asking for help. And so this is my chance to say thank you for your help. Almost everybody here right now was a part of the Indiegogo campaign, our first ever community supported publishing campaign. And it was such a big deal for me to approach publishing Dreamfruit in a different way and invite community support, asking for help. So that's a big one for me this year. And this other note I made for myself, you're stronger than you think. I've had a challenging year with family and complicated things related to family health, loss in my family, my dad's estate, probate, court, blah, 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 blah. And that's just a little tiny bit, but it has kind of contributed to a lot of just personal reflection and realizing that actually, yeah, even when I think I can't, I probably can. That said, another note for myself, you work harder than you need to. So anyway, what are yours? I'm curious. And I'm just kind of sharing my own notes here to hopefully inspire you. And if you are interested and if it helps you to kind of play along, you're certainly welcome to chime in the chat. I think I'm able to track comments, if there are things that you're reflecting on, if there are photos you want to share from either your closing page or from your mandala for the year, you could do that in the chat. Not required at all. I'm just inviting that as one possibility. Okay, just a couple more minutes with 2022. Now that I've kind of shown you these bookends and you can maybe get a feel for how you might sort of close something out. I mean, we really do want to be able to mark all that has gone before, so that what we're building on going forward is, there's underlying support. We're integrating our experiences. And then just to show you, since everybody's going to be, of course, very different in their Dreamfruit, but just to give you some ideas, if you are into the whole like art journaling world of possibility, then this might be of interest to you. And if you're kind of more straight and clean, play to your level, I'm just going to show you a little bit of how this went for me last year, and then we're going to jump into 2023 and see how it might go going forward. But for me, and of course this is different in the new book, in the past we have had a Dreamfruit, an ally of Dreamfruit, and then we have the dream for that month, that lunar cycle, and then we have a place for our own ally to appear for that month. So the ally, and we'll talk about this, more in future gatherings. The ally is really a magical helper. It can be a human, it can be a word, it can be an image, a shape, a color. It can be a sit spot in nature. It can be your favorite chair. So there's lots of ways to be with your magical ally, and it will present itself in due course over the time of each lunar cycle, probably. Sometimes sometimes it's not until the very end of the year when you're kind of working in your mandala here and you're like, oh, who really helped me? And you'll see in your notes, and like all of a sudden you see very clearly what was your support. But more often than not, the ally will present during the course of the lunar cycle. No need to get super, eager, if it's not showing up for you at the very beginning of the new moon, no stress. Often mine won't show up until after the full. I find that full to dark, the full to dark time of the cycle is really when I'm able to reflect more clearly and kind of see what was going on and what was helping me. Often I will kind of highlight certain phrases that stand out for me, either in the weave or in the dream. And those are super supportive to me. And then the notes from the field, sometimes the questions, these little prompts that I've left here, are very supportive, and I work with them, and let's see, I might color code my responses, or other times like I'll kind of do a row of washi and kind of have just like sections for each prompt. Other times these questions get in my way and I just cover them up. There's nothing, really urgent about how to do this, except that you do it in a way that feels good. So, yeah, and then you always have a place for your own guiding question. What's up for you? What would help you to think about? And for me at this time, back at the beginning of the year, wow, I was thinking about the best course of action with my dad's wife, widow, power of attorney, how to deal with the house, the estate. It was a very, it was kind of a hairball. And so it was really helpful to just create a section that was going to help me think about that. So lots of just playing, and we're going to talk quite a bit about the moon wheel again this year. But in a similar way to the Mandala of Belonging, you can plant something in the center of your moon wheel and then kind of take day by day, what you're planting here might be fed or watered. Lots of ways to do that. And of course, now we're getting into the actual lunar terrain, the planning pages where you can each moon week kind of set, let's see, here's a good example, like maybe you have a certain theme or intention for that moon week, for this moon week, and then just kind of let it show up for you. Maybe there's something you're learning about during that time. So, okay, we're not going to dig too far into that, but I did just want to show you a little bit of how far in you can go and how, you can also do very little inside your dream fruit. So, yeah, let me just take a moment, peek over here at this little machine. A few things that happened in this book. Of course, we had the tabs. Last year, we did this with Elise and Elizabeth. The two of us teamed up and we did this just fabulous Magical Moon Tour. It was super fun with really awesome women. Thank you to everybody who played along. It was a blast and kind of epic and transformative. Some of the things we worked in, with Dreamfruit, we're dealing with kind of multiple layers. We're dealing with the form of the book, all the little things that, are here, and, you can make tabs. And this is one of the first things we did in the group last year was we tabbed our books. I did color coding for seasons. So I did shades of blue for winter. I wrote the names. Shades of green for spring moons, shades of orange for the summer moons, shades of purple for the fall moons. So there's form, which is super fun and a really great way for those of us who are kinesthetic to relate to time. This is a big reason I love Dreamfruit, is it gives me a place that I can just kind of put my hands on time. It gives texture and tactile feedback to what can be very abstract. And then I also made this little symbol for myself that I was able to use throughout the year as like a little bookmark, and it's kind of like a little avatar. It's like a playing piece. This is me. And so I can see myself, showing up each lunar cycle. Oh, here I am in this terrain. So it kind of games it a little bit. And so I'm just showing you form. And then another thing form-wise that I'm going to do right now, I have this really great envelope that I got years ago, actually, but it's repositionable, it's restickable, it's got a Velcro seal, and I keep in it little bits and scraps that I think I'm going to want to use in my book. So I'm just going to, oh no, this year we have a calendar back here. Yay. But that means I don't want to cover that up. So I might just put it here. So those are things that I might just want to play with. Envelopes are great. I'm going to just show you one more thing. I might move this one. No, I think I'll start a new envelope. So one other, again, I'm just going to talk form for a second, and then we'll get into content layers. The other thing that you can do, and that we did at the beginning of last year's program, a 2-inch hole punch could be your friend. I like this kind because it collapses and stacks easily. But with a 2-inch hole punch, you can just kind of crank out several of these little buddies. And these 2 inches is great because that fits into all of the circles, the guiding question, the ally circle, and the kind of dream seed circle in the center of the moon wheel. And you might just like to have a few of these around, and if you do, you could kind of store them in a little envelope. Glue dots are awesome. You could kind of just adhere that to the inside of your book. Something I didn't say that I wanted to mention, just to explain a little bit more of why I'm doing this really scrappy video today, is kind of personal. I just really fried my circuits this year, and I'm looking for ways to simplify and have more fun. And so this is an experiment today, this little call, or this little live video, my way of just sort of seeing if I can help offer something useful to you without having it be too complex for me. So that's why we're doing a scrappy fireside chat. But any of the stuff that I'm mentioning, if you want more information, or if you're curious about it, or like, tell me more, you can just chime in the comments or chat, or you can reach out to me, or we can start a conversation in our Dreamfruit Travelers group. There's lots of ways to be with these little circles, but on a day like today, what you might do is maybe make, obviously I have I love circular paper, it makes me happy. I have a smaller hole punch as well. Maybe make several little rounds for yourself and write on each of them. What are the things you're thinking about? Goals, things that are super nourishing to you, that you are hoping to think about a little bit more in the year ahead, or incorporate into your days. And just kind of drop them into a little envelope or a little dish. These to me become really useful. They travel with me throughout the year, and I'm not going to show you again my 2022. I feel like you've probably seen way more of that than you want to, but in a little envelope you can drop things that you're thinking about, and then you can match those with these little buddies with the larger ones, so that when it comes time, when you start a new lunar cycle, you can just kind of browse through what are these kind of domains or categories of concern or interest or need or offerings, and maybe create something here that kind of pulls that thread through, and then that might become what you plant in the middle of your moon wheel for that lunar cycle. There's lots of ways to be with this, but I'm just showing you that one possible way. So already you can see I've got, you know, a few pieces that are just in place for me. Just little collage-y bits and interesting paper and some extra tabs. And this is just, you know, for me to draw from. There's another thing that you can do is have a little envelope or place where you keep words, little stickers or tiny pictures. This might become something that supports you as you choose allies, or as allies choose you, as you seed each lunar cycle. So yeah, so these are just kind of reference. And then we get into 2023. It's happening at long last. Here we are. We're crossing the threshold, stepping into this next chapter. I'm not sure if you've spent much time with the kind of with your book, but I wanted to just do a few things for folks who are new to Dreamfruit. The front and back matter are really, hopefully, very supportive to you. And I'm speaking of just these very first few pages where we talk about moon-based planning. Kind of gives you a little sense of like what I mean when I'm talking about moon weeks, and how to maybe think about the phases of the moon in your planning process, how to think about the moon wheel in your planning process. And every so often you'll see a little star in a circle throughout the book. Here's another one. And when you see this little star in the circle, this is really just here as like, maybe you could try this. Here's a little exercise. Here's a little game you can play with your Dreamfruit. So keep an eye out for those. But these first few pages really do want to help you. So take a minute, if you haven't, to just read the introduction, and maybe read, you know, check out the quick start guide and just jump in that way. But if it's your first time, you might want to kind of orient yourself a little bit to the intention of Dreamfruit. We're really trying to create a tool that brings time into its proper expression, which is lively and textural and loaded with information. It can be so intelligent, time can. And so hopefully Dreamfruit is a way of sort of bringing something that's very abstract into something that can be sort of played with a little bit. Here we are again at this sort of beginning point. And this year we have a slightly different, every year I feel like, oh, just a little bit more, a little tweak, a little dub, you know, it's hard to not just keep polishing and changing things a little bit, but I think we're kind of done now. But I really wanted to be able to step through the gate into 2023 with some amount of consideration. And so there is a question here: what dream do you carry through the gate? And I actually took a minute on this is a scrappy book that was a damaged one by the printer, and I accidentally did this in this book instead of my actual Dreamfruit, but I just took a second and answered that question and glued it in. So that's something you could do today before you step through the gate. What dream do you carry with you as you approach this gate? And just remember that you are stepping into a kind of a kind of an enchanted landscape. Again, this small trust of women in scarlet robes are walking the waterline. They're singing and scattering these verses back and forth to each other, sort of weaving the year. And this invocation does help us orient. It reminds us that there is great fire breathing in the south, and the eastern dawn does bring light from the mind of creation. And the waters of the land are vast, and they are deep, and they are situated to the west, and they flow and lap against the shores, and that the north is the home of our ancestors and our winter lodge where we are right now and where we go to dream through the long night, and that the world tree reaches deeply into the earth with these intensely deep roots, and also into the sky. And so we have above and below. And so taking some time to really be with the sacred circle and to let that be what Dreamfruit and your Dreamfruit journey is held within. So here we are gathered for the dawn of a new time, stitching it fervently to the robes of deep time. And the path appears, and we step through the gate together. And then we enter the story and themes of 2023. Here's an overview, seasonally organized. And we're going to talk about this actual content. So we've talked about form a little bit. Always play to your level when it comes to form, especially because, Dreamfruit, obviously, there's a lot of features in it. There's a lot of ways to be with it, a lot of bits and bobs. You can do half of it or less and just use it for reference, and it will still, the magic is baked in, so it will be there for you. So I'm just trying to frame a little bit. There's form, the book, the bits, the ways to play, the nice thick paper in the Luxe Art Journal edition, the beautiful, we haven't even talked about the beautiful artwork by Beth Lorio. Oh my gosh, this is like a whole other, I don't even know how to begin. This is a whole other conversation. I think we probably are going to have to do like a special session soon to kind of share a little bit about where this art comes from, the Sabian symbols. But then there's the content. So in addition to the form, these little half sheets, all that stuff, there's the actual content, which is a story. And Dreamfruit tells us a story of us walking through life, this wildly changing world and the landscape that we find ourselves in here on Earth at this time in 2023. The story is particular. It's not last year's story. We're not going to be, launching out like our ingenue magical apprentices did last January. Instead, we find that we're beginning here in this time of commemoration. We begin with an ending. While we turned toward the safe haven of our past, we find instead that the temple stands empty and there's shattered glass on the floor. What remains is still beautiful and it carries great power, but the damage is evident and we can't ignore it. Within the singed walls, we cast a bright circle. We carve a story of remembering into the stone. The story of the broken water and the broken-hearted. The story of the blind clutch of fear and division. We carve a warning and a wish, a burn and a balm. And do we see the standing oaks? And are they our monument to life? In the darkness, my love, let us open the door. The wound is also your teacher. So that is the way that we begin the year, and that is the dream of the year. And then we kind of get it to be unpacked a little bit more here in the weave. The story of 2023 will take us deep in. It's a little bit of a different. Last year we went out. For for those of you who traveled with us last year. This year, there's more of an inward journey, although we are covering ground. We will be moving from this sort of temple in the forest. We will emerge from the forest and we will cross the kind of desert, the dry lands, on our way to what we call the hardscape, the city. So that is sort of where we're kind of going. The imaginal landscape is from forest through desert into tight inward chrysalis, bursting out and entering the city hardscape. And that is, one way to think about the through line. If you received the lunar tale for Earthlings, one of the best things to do, in my opinion, everybody's going to be different, but I just think sit down and read the story, moon by moon. You'll get, again, the seasonal overview, winter, the theme realization, spring, the theme reflection, summer, noble summons, fall, differentiation, and then we get our 13th moon and we turn the wheel. But you can just kind of read through these dreams in this little chapbook, and you'll see that they weave together, and they are color-coded by season, so you can really get a sense of where you are and refer back as needed to the kind of overview of the themes for that season, the spring moons. I feel like there's something really helpful about kind of getting the dreamscape sort of seeded into the psyche early on. Of course, it will change. I mean, as you actually step into it, certain things from the dream will pop out. So I would recommend taking time to just, again, like highlight, underline, or circle phrases or images or words that stand out for you, both in the dream and in the weave. Here's where you'll record your ally this year. We moved it to make room for this beautiful artwork. And here we are again with the guiding questions for the month. These prompts are quite particular to the theme of this lunar cycle. Here's where you'll record your guiding question. The altar of mystery is a wonderful place to experiment or to put things that you want to kind of hold dear a little bit to yourself, maybe kind of things that you might want to feel a little bit more hidden or safe. Yeah, and here we are again. And the other thing, I know we're getting close to the end of our time. I just want to do one more little shout out here, and that is, again, the beginning and ending pages, the sort of front and back matter of Dreamfruit. So you have the real heart of it is the journey through these moons. But the supports, the structural supports for the journey really are found at the beginning and end of the book. So today is a wonderful day to just sit down and read through some of these things. Read through the story. Read through the back matter a little bit. The compendium is really, so here again, this is how this coming year will close. So we're not going to get hasty and look at that too much. But in the compendium, you'll find this wonderful map by Dan Miller. It's a really great illustration that shows the lunar phases, starting with the new, waxing up to full, and waning back down. And what he's done also with these, if you follow the story of the branches as we go around, you'll see the cycle of the sun. Here we are in winter where the branches are bare. And as the moon waxes, so does the sun. And the sun waxes and we start seeing little buds, little leaves pop out in spring. And then we arrive here to the full moon. And in a similar way that the lunar cycle brings us a full moon, the solar cycle brings us to full sun, which is our summer months when everything is in full bloom, full flower, full fruit. And then as the moon begins to wane, so too our sun has a waning time with fall as the leaves begin to drop off. Okay, so that is there just to, I don't know, help us remember that there are cycles inside cycles. Here's a little list of the things that you'll find inside the compendium, but I would really, I invite you to read this, spend some time with it, and refer to it throughout the year. There's a lot back here. I put it in the back because I just wanted you to be able to jump in to your Dreamfruit journey here at the front, but think of it as something, as the compendium's got your back. It's back here as an absolute reference. Here again are some of these little stars with the circles. So here are some suggestions, little ritual suggestions, ways to be with the book. This is something we're going to talk about at length when we talk about Beth Lorio's beautiful art. We will also talk about the Sabian or degree symbols and the sky story for the year. But you can see this diagram shows the kind of seed syllables for each lunar cycle. Each of these black circles is a dark moon, a new moon. And in each of them is a degree. So this says 2 degrees Capricorn, and a date, and then a word. So that's the name commemoration for this lunar cycle. The new moon, the moon was new on December 23rd of 22 at 2 degrees Capricorn. And you'll read here, but there are phrases or images that have been psychically channeled for each degree of our sacred circle, 360 degrees. And so for 2 degrees Capricorn, that's what this is. There is an image, a phrase, 3 rose windows in a Gothic church, 1 damaged by war. And this is where we're getting this magnificent art from Beth Lorio, but it's also a little bit of how the story kind of strings together, moon by moon, like kind of pearls on a string. So that's what we're looking at here. And again, we'll get into this a little bit more over the course of the year. There's a discussion of the moon herself, and when you see this little circled star, you have a little serving suggestion, a little way to play. But then the final thing I want to show you in the compendium is these, there are 3 sections about the moon herself as she travels through each cycle. So here's the moon through the phases, new, waxing crescent, first quarter, and on to the dark. And then you have the elements, air, fire, water, earth, and ether. And so the moon is traveling through each of these elements on a regular basis. You can trace the moon's path through the elements, and that is another thing we'll be getting into this year, is how to do that. And then you have the zodiac itself, the different signs of the Western zodiac, Aries, Taurus, Gemini. So I'm showing you this because these 3 pages, 3 spreads, the moon through the phases, through the elements, and through the zodiac. Oh, wait, there's a 4th. The moon in context. So referring to these in back can be a cool way to play along day by day with Dreamfruit. You can notice in the calendar pages what sign the moon is in, what phase the moon is in. And you'll see, for example, June 30th, the moon is in Sagittarius. It's a waxing gibbous. It's almost full. And so then what you can do is check back here, and you can read a little bit about what, you find Sagittarius, it's a fire sign. You can read about the moon in a fire sign. You can read about the moon as waxing gibbous in the phases. What have I done? Oh, there it is. So here is your waxing gibbous, and you'll get some insight there. I'm just suggesting this as a way to kind of see. So you've got Sagittarius, fire, phase, The zodiac itself, like you can read specifically about Sagittarius and what happens when the moon is in Sag. And then you'll notice this was in the 7th moon that we were looking. And this final spread about the moon is going to invite you to think about our world, the context in which we find ourselves. And if anything, I really hope that Dreamfruit does support contextualizing your personal journey, so that we're not just planning based on, I want a cookie. We're also thinking about, what it might be to make room for traditional ecological knowledge as a way to build climate resilience. And here's a website that you might check out during that lunar cycle. We have lots of things going on in our world right now, right? It's not an easy time. And Dreamfruit really wants to be a support through this time. And so remembering the context that we are finding our own personal journeys within, I think is actually a pretty big support to the nervous system, to just make room for what is rather than kind of have it loom unacknowledged on the outer edges of our consciousness, really trying to center it with some of that. So that's a little taste of what's going on in the compendium. Another thing, last thing, you have many blank sheets in back of your book. And this being the first day of the year, there are lots of ways to be with this, but you might think about kind of hanging out with some of the pages I've shown you today, whether it's the overview of the seasons, the choosing your word for the year, putting something in the center of your mandala of belonging. Any and all of that will be, really supportive to you on the journey through the year ahead. And getting oriented to the back as back matter, as I've already shown you. The other thing is just working with these empty spaces. You can set up a master list of things that are going to be coming up for you. You can set up on the back, you can do, like a reading list, podcasts you want to check out. You can set up a page that you might use for quotes, passages that you come upon as you kind of go through the year, things that are interesting to you. You might just designate a page to collect those on. Lots of ways to work with, but this blank paper in the back is kind of there because we all have different things that that benefit us, that are supportive. So I hope you find those to be useful in whatever way, and I'd be curious to hear what other people do with blank paper, and that's just like a planning nerd question. So this concludes, more or less, a little scrappy journey through the year ahead. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about with the actual themes. Read through the book, read through the overview. That will give you a sense of how to best support yourself in the days and months ahead. If you want more information and really want to kind of get some actual astrological content, I am teaming up with, once again, with the brilliant Stephanie Shea and KJ Atlas, two lovely astrologers and friends. This will be our 5th year doing this. We'll be doing a deep dive on January 7th. I will put the details, I think they're already in our group, but I'll put them again below. And the next New Moon Cafe will be coming up. Let's see, I have the dates in back. So our next gathering will be January 21st, and the registration is available it's up and open on my website, dreamfruit.world. So you can sign up for Awakening. One of the things I'm able to do this year is a subscription. My platform added this wonderful tool, which is subscriptions. So that I think is really exciting. It might make it a lot more convenient for folks who do want to just sign up for the whole series. You can just, subscribe, and it'll just bill you moon by moon. And the other thing I wanted to mention about the New Moon Cafe this year, the format will be the same, this 30-minute kind of dive into the dream of that month. And then what we're going to do is we'll kind of end the formal call after half an hour, and that recording will be made available to anybody who's subscribing, anybody who registers even for the single one. You will get the recording. And then we will have an informal time following the cafe, during which we will, it'll be our Dreamfruit Jam. Some of you have been to Dreamfruit Jams before, and so you kind of know what the game is. The game is, do I know what the game is? It changes all the time, it feels like. But basically, it'll be a time for us to work in our Dreamfruit. So we'll dive into the dream for that lunar cycle. January 21st, we'll be diving into the dream of the awakening moon. We'll kind of dig around a little bit in the deep imagination, and then we'll kind of end the recording, the official formal New Moon Cafe, and then we'll set up, just have time to play in our personal dream fruits, maybe a time to work with our little ally circles, and kind of have like lay out some guiding questions for ourselves, that kind of thing, play with washi tape. This is one of my favorite things to do, is to just take time at the beginning of each month and, maybe just trim out, choose some colors or patterns that might suit me during that time, and, kind of decorate my page a little bit. It's just not everybody's like that, but for me, it's a really nice way to get started. And also each Dreamfruit Jam, I will kind of offer a little light suggestion of how to be with your book, or point out a feature, or kind of dig in a little bit more to some aspect of the moon wheel. So the jam will be more of the form, and the cafe will be the content. Does that kind of make sense? It's sort of helpful to me to think about form and content when it comes to Dreamfruit. So that's a little bit of what is coming up. Hopefully this has been kind of a cozy little fireside chat for you. I'm really honored that you took a little bit of time here at the beginning of this year to think about Dreamfruit with me. And if you are curious about things, I'm just sort of, maybe it's a little scattershot, just kind of wanting to provide a few different entry points, a few ways to play. If there are things that you're curious about, or ways that you love to play inside Dreamfruit, or things that you wish we had talked about more, please let me know. I live to serve. I'm a Virgo, so I would love to hear. And I love our group, by the way, our Dreamfruit group of travelers, fellow travelers. We are an amazing resource to each other. So, there's going to be a lot of brilliance coming from all directions inside our Dreamfruit group, and I'm just really pleased and delighted to be in such excellent company. Thank you for being my traveling companions. I feel like there's probably a dozen other things I should be mentioning. I am doing a year-long series besides the New Moon Cafe, and it just went up right before midnight last night for the year ahead, and it will be a writing coven and lunar council. It's called Dear Earthlings, and I'm doing it in 3-month subscriptions. You can join anytime, but it's really best done in at a minimum of 3-month increments. So that is available. If you have questions about that, please let me know. I would love to see you. It's a small group. We're limiting it to just probably 20 people at the most. So it's kind of intended to be very cozy. Like I said earlier, like for me this year, I just don't want to blow my circuits any more than necessary. I want to find ways to be more kind and gentle with myself while having fun, while sharing the journey. And so what I needed more than anything was just a time set aside to write, and to write in a magical way. So we will be doing journal magic, incantational work, and working with the sacred circle, the elements, elemental relationships, all of that just through the kind of portal of Dreamfruit and the month by month themes that it holds. So this will be our entry point, and then like we will be kind of exploring magic kind of through Dreamfruit. There's a lot of other stuff going on. I did just put a post up yesterday to invite other Dreamfruit tour guides to share a little bit about what you're doing. There are in-person, like local in-person groups happening in several different places around the US. And if you are one of those leaders or guides, please put that information, if you're open to sharing, put that information under the post that I shared in our Dreamfruit Travelers group so that other people can find you. And if you have questions about Dreamfruit groups, again, just reach out. I'm here, and I love to be in touch. So, okay, well, we are winding down this woolly little Facebook adventure here at the beginning of 2023, and I want to just say, may it go well for us all. May the path ahead be bright, and may our steps be light and lively. May we enter into this transformative journey with pure heart, clear purpose, open mind, soft belly, strong back. I love traveling with you, and I can't wait to share the whole journey with you. And I'm sending you so much love. Oh, wait, here. I'm sending you so much love. Love. In 2023. Okay. Talk to you soon. Bye. Mwah. Thank you for being here with me.